Welcome to Learn English Speaking. Let's talk stories. Here we bring you amazing stories to improve your English fluency. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exciting lessons. Let's learn together.
Even if dreams can show us the future, this dream did not make sense. Must I never pass a lorry on a clear road? Can a dream show us the future and give us the opportunity of changing it? It is hard to believe. If we can see the future in a dream, then surely the future already exists. If it does, then we are not free to act in the ways we wish to. We are not responsible for our own lives. Before I tell you the dream, I must explain a little about the context. It was the summer of 4 years ago, and I was driving my family back from Italy through the south of France. My son had not yet learned to drive. My daughter was too young, and my wife doesn't drive at all. I had been at the wheel for the best part of 3 weeks. Perhaps I was tired. Perhaps I could think of nothing except cars. We spent the night of the dream in a town called Tain-l'Hermitage. Now I'll tell you the dream. I was sitting in a big, powerful, cream-coloured car, and I was driving at high speed through the country. I was coming to a bend in the road, and in front of me, there was a very large lorry. My foot reached out towards the brake, but it could not find it. I looked down. There was no brake. Worse, my hands held empty air. There was no wheel for them to hold. There were no controls of any kind. Already we were almost into the back of the lorry. I shouted in fear. Then I heard a calm voice coming from my left, and I turned my head. A stranger was sitting there. He was a cheerful man of about 40. He was wearing an expensive shirt, and on his head he had a red hat. I couldn't understand what he said. He spoke very quickly in French, and my own French is not very good. I didn't, in fact, care what he said. My eyes were on his clean, fat hands, which were holding the wheel. This car had its wheel on the left. He, not I, was in control. We drove safely round the bend. He turned the wheel slightly to place the car in the middle of the road. He was going to pass the lorry. The road stretched straight ahead. It was bright in the sunlight, and it was quite empty. Only one other person was in sight. A woman was sitting outside a small house with white walls, and this house was almost exactly ahead of us. She was sitting by a table, putting some flowers in pots. She wanted to sell us some, and waved them at us. This sight, for some reason, filled me with a terrible fear. The flowers made me think of death, and our final resting place. At this moment, we were level with the lorry, and ready to pass it. But then, the lorry began to turn away from the side of the road towards our car. It appeared that the driver was doing this on purpose. The stranger by my side shouted loudly and tried to move out of the way. There was a terrible noise from the back of the car, and then an explosion. The earth seemed to turn over, and the noise of flames burned in my ears. At that point, I woke up in fear. I was very worried by this dream, and could not sleep again. It seemed to have a message, and I wanted to explain it. Even if dreams can show us the future, this dream did not make sense. Must I never pass a lorry on a clear road? The road to Paris is always filled with very large lorries. Most of them come up from Marseille, and I always have to pass them when the road is clear. I can't drive slowly behind them forever. No, this was not the meaning of the dream. At its heart was some kind of fear. I had to recognize my fear, and then I could forget all about it. I thought about my driving during the last 3 weeks. I tried to remember all the lorries and all the small white houses. I thought of all the cars which were painted cream. I remembered nothing of any great interest. I had imagined that the road in the dream must be in France. It was long, empty, and straight. But then I remembered that we had passed the lorry on the right. So the dream was about a road in England. In England, all cars keep to the left. Immediately, I remembered something. 2 years before this, I was travelling in the north of England. An American and I were making some radio programs. Brakes and other controls were also on the left. The American was a careless driver, and often passed other cars against my advice. Remember that I was in a better position to see. I was sitting on the right. Once, just after Nottingham, he played chicken. You probably know about chicken. It is a game that is played on the roads. It is becoming more and more popular in America because long journeys are often very dull. You just move your car into the middle of the road and stay there. When another car appears, it comes towards you in the middle of the road. The driver who turns away is the chicken. Quite often, neither driver turns away. I expressed my displeasure at this game in language that the American could not fail to understand. We did not play it again, but it had probably left its mark on my mind. So then, when I was asleep, I experienced it all again in a dream. I also remembered something else while I was having breakfast. When we played chicken, it was an uncommonly windy day. We stopped at Chesterfield, and the American bought a hat. It was a black hat, not a red one, but in dreams details are not always exact. After this, I forgot about the dream until the afternoon. The big French lorries often play their own game. They stay in the middle of the road, and you can't pass them. You have to stay behind them. Sometimes you have to follow them for endless kilometres, although the roads are almost completely empty. This afternoon, we were following a large vehicle which was making terrible noises. When I blew my horn, the driver moved to the side of the road. But it was the wrong side. He was driving along on the left, instead of keeping to the right. There was enough space on the right for me to pass him, but to do that would be wrong. So I just followed him for a few kilometres, and I told myself not to pass him. I considered the situation from every point of view. I could certainly turn my car more quickly than he could turn his lorry. It was a very big, heavy lorry. Could I perhaps pass him quickly on the right before he could do anything? If he turned to the right, though, he could easily kill us all. He probably wanted a bit of fun, but he might want an accident. If he killed us, nobody would say it was his fault. The law would be on his side. The road ahead was quite empty, and went on for many kilometres. I drove more slowly until some distance separated us. Then I increased my speed as much as I could. I drove towards that empty space beside the lorry. My car was moving at about 110 kilometres an hour. The front of my car was almost level with the back of the lorry. Then I saw something that knocked the breath out of my body. On the grass, beside the road, a woman was sitting outside a small white house with a table of flowers. For the first time in my life, I changed my mind while I was preparing to pass another vehicle. My foot went down hard on the brake. The car rocked from side to side. From behind me, I heard the sound of a horn. Another car was following us at a high speed. I knew its colour before I saw it. It was cream. I pressed hard on the brake and turned the wheel slightly. I was just able to move in behind the lorry without touching it. The other car passed us, and the driver blew his horn wildly. It reached the lorry, and then the lorry turned towards it. For a moment, I thought that the car was going to pass the lorry safely. It was moving very fast. Then the front of the lorry just touched the back of the car. It was only a light touch, but it knocked the car towards the side of the road and the woman at the table. The driver of that car knew exactly what to do. With the greatest skill, he turned it back into the middle of the road. His control was wonderful, much better than mine. He waved angrily at the lorry driver and drove quickly away in a cloud of dust. He was soon out of sight. We stayed that night in Fontainebleau. A big car was standing outside the hotel, and the back showed signs of damage to the paintwork. It was a cream car, and so I looked for the driver. He was not wearing a red hat or an expensive shirt. He was a young man from Paris, not like the driver in my dream. He spoke good English, so I asked him if he would like the number of that lorry. I had noticed it, and I was happy to give it to him. But he only laughed. The law won't help you if you pass on the wrong side of the road. To him, the whole thing had been a game. It tests your skill, he said. If the car is powerful enough, you can do it. But you couldn't do it. Not in your car. I didn't tell him about my dream, my reason for not passing the lorry. There was no time. He was in a hurry and wanted to reach Paris quickly. It made me think, though. I don't really believe in dreams, of course, but some things saved us all from a terrible death.
Chapter 13. Noises in the night. Larry cooked breakfast. Everyone ate together, but Professor 1 ate together. But Professor Lubner was not there. He stayed in his tent. Everyone was talking about the Toruk. Larry, Greg, and Abdul did not say anything about what they had seen. After breakfast, Professor Lubner talked to the men. Together they made plans for their search. One of the scientists spoke about the weather. The weather will be very good today, he said. But it is going to get bad soon. There will be strong winds and more heavy snow. We haven't much time, Professor Lubner said to the members of the expedition. Today, some of us will search above those rocks. The others will come with me. We will search around Mount Canchan. Larry and Greg went with Professor Lubner. They watched him carefully. They started to climb Mount Canchan. It was very steep, and they climbed slowly. The sky was blue. They could see other mountains far away to the north. They searched all day. They found nothing. They returned to the tents in the early evening. The others were already evening. The others were already there. They had not seen the Torok or its claw marks. The sun set behind the mountains. It became dark. Larry was the first guard. While the others slept, he sat in his tent. "If you hear the professor, wake me up," Greg said to Larry. "Bad," said to Larry. "Beg," said to Larry. "Bad. Weather is coming, and he will probably go out again tonight." Larry wrote in his diary as usual and listened. "What am I listening for?" he asked himself. "Am I listening for Lugner? Or am I listening for the real Torok?" Larry was very tired. Larry was very tired. After the climbing and the walking, it was difficult to keep awake. Sometimes he fell asleep for a moment, but he soon woke up. Later in the night he made some coffee. At 11 o'clock, Larry heard noises outside. Professor Lugner was coming out of his tent. He came towards Larry's tent and stopped. He called Larry's name quietly. "Bakewell, Bakewell, are you awake?" he asked. Larry suddenly felt very frightened. "Does he know that I saw him making the claw marks?" he thought. "Does he want to kill me now?" Larry did not speak. The professor went away. He went back to his own tent. Larry listened. He heard the professor opening a box. Then he heard the box closing again. So that's where he keeps the claw. Larry thought to himself, "It's in his metal box. Now I know why he watched the box so carefully." Larry moved quietly to the door of his tent and watched carefully. He saw Professor Lugner coming out of his tent. The professor walked slowly away from the camp. When he reached the rocks, he began to make the claw marks. Larry woke Greg up. They went out of the tent together and climbed the rocks. The professor was going a different way this time. He climbed a small hill of snow towards the north. Larry and Greg could not see him now. "Shall we follow him?" Larry asked Greg. "No," Greg replied. "We mustn't leave our footprints in the snow. We must stay here. If anyone follows the professor, we must stop them." They sat and listened for sounds from the tents. They listened for the professor. Everything was quiet. Larry and Greg waited for half an hour. "I'm getting cold," Larry said to Greg. "So am I," said Greg. "We'll go back to the tents soon. We can listen from our tent." They climbed back towards the camp. Suddenly in the north, they heard a terrible scream. Larry and Greg stopped and listened. Everything was silent. There were no more sounds. Chapter 14. A Meeting at Midnight. The sound of the wind had stopped. Larry and Greg stood still. They did not know what to do. "What's happened?" Larry asked Greg. "I don't know," Greg replied. "I think something has happened to the professor." "We must go back to the tents," Larry said. "We will need go back to the tents," Larry said. "We will need help." Greg did not reply. He was listening for another sound. "Perhaps we will hear something," Greg said. "Then we will know that the professor is still alive." They stood silently and listened. Then Larry and Greg heard a sound. "The professor's alive," Larry said. He was pleased. He did not like Professor Lugner, but he did not want him to die. "Be quiet," said Greg. "Listen." There were more sounds. They were the sounds of something large and heavy. The sounds of something large. Moving away from Greg and Larry. "It's the professor," said Larry. "He is all right. He is making the Torque's claw marks again." Greg was not sure. "But why did he scream so loudly?" he asked. "We must go and find out." The sounds were moving away. They could not hear them clearly. "The professor is moving very quickly," Larry said. Larry and Greg climbed down from the rocks. They walked across the snow. "What about our footprints?" Larry asked. "It doesn't matter now," Greg replied. "If the professor is hurt, we will have to get help. Then everyone will know what he has been doing." Larry and Greg found the Torque's claw marks. They both climbed up the hill. They reached the top and looked over. The other side of the hill was steep. Larry and Greg could see the track of the claw marks. The track went behind some rocks. "The professor is somewhere behind those rocks," Greg said. Larry went over the top of the hill first. The snow was deep. His legs went into it. It was difficult to walk. "We must stay near the rocks," he said to Greg. "The snow isn't so deep there, and the rocks will hide us." They climbed up the rocks. Larry looked over a rock and saw the professor. He was bending over anew the snow. Greg stood beside Larry. They both watched the professor. "He's looking away from us," Larry said. "And he isn't moving." They waited, but the professor did not move. "Shall we go nearer to him?" Larry asked Greg. "We'll go very slowly and very quietly," Greg replied. "We don't want him to hear us." Larry and Greg moved forward slowly. They moved nearer to the professor. The professor was not moving. Greg stopped and spoke quietly to Larry. "You go to the left. He'd go to the left." Said, "I will move to the right." When I put up my hand, call Professor Lugner's name. He'll turn and look at you. Then I'll run and jump on him. I understand, Larry said. Larry moved through the snow to the left. Greg went to the right. Greg went to the right, put up his hand. He was ready to run towards Professor Lugner. Larry called Professor Lugner's name. Professor Lugner. Professor Lugner. The professor did not move. Greg looked at Larry. Larry called again. This time, he called more loudly. "Come on!" Greg shouted. They both ran towards Professor Lugner. He was dead. His body was bending over in the snow. "Look at the snow," Larry said to Greg. For the first time they saw that the snow was red with blood. Larry touched Professor was red with blood. Lugner's body, it fell down on the snow. "Claw marks," said Larry. The front of Professor Lugner's body was covered in blood. His clothes were torn. Huge claws had torn open his face and arms. Greg looked around. "Where's the thorax claw that? Where is the thorax claw? There!" The professor was carrying, he asked. "It's here in the snow," Larry replied. "There's no blood on it." "Greg, look!" Larry shouted. He was pointing down the hill away from the professor's body. "The thorax claw marks go on across the snow. They're on across the snow," he said. A track of claw marks went down the side of the mountain. Larry looked at Greg. "The thorax does exist," he said. Chapter 15, a job for Larry. The members of the expedition went back to Kabul. They got on the plane for London. London airport newspaper and television reporters were waiting for them. The reporters asked many questions about the expedition, and they took lots of photographs. Larry was famous. His picture was on the front page of every newspaper in the country. Larry was very busy. Everyone wanted to know about the thorax and Professor Lugner. Larry had to go to meetings. He had to talk to famous scientists. There was no time to look for jobs now. 2 weeks after they came back, Larry and Greg were on television. They were asked more questions about the thorax. Why did Professor Lugner make the thorax claw marks? They were asked. The thorax had made the professor famous, Larry replied. He wanted to show everyone that the thorax exists. And he did show everyone, Greg added. After the television interview, Larry was saying goodbye to Greg. "What are you going to do now, Greg?" he asked. "I'm going back to the army," Greg replied. "And what are you going to do, Larry?" "I don't know," Larry replied. "Why don't you apply it?" "Write a book?" Greg said. "You can call it In Search of the Thorax," Larry laughed. That night, Larry got out his diary. He began to read it again. Then he started to write. He did not go to bed. He wrote all night. A year later, Larry's book was on sale in the bookshops. On the front was a picture of the Torah. It was the wooden Torah which stood in Professor Lugner's room. Many people bought the book. One day, Greg was walking through the center of London. He walked past a bookshop. He saw a notice in the window. Today, Larry Bakewell, the author and climber, will visit this shop. He will sign copies of his book in search of the Torah. There were lots of people inside the shop. They had all bought a copy of Larry's book. They were waiting for Larry to sign their copies. Greg bought a copy too. He stood and waited. "Next person, please," Larry said. He did not see Greg. He did not look up. He wrote in Greg's book, "With best wishes, Larry." "Bakewell, what are you going to do now?" Greg asked Larry. Larry knew Greg's voice immediately. He looked up and laughed. "I'm going on an expedition to look for the Torah," said Larry. "We will find the Torah this time. I am sure. I've heard that before," Greg said to Larry. "May I apply for the post of quartermaster?"